So on February 1st, it was a Shabbat, and I was watching Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. And about halfway through it, Michael Rood does what Christians call communion, and he has 2 loaves of Challah. And we Yehudim on Shabbat do the same thing. We bless Yehovah for providing wine and bread for us to eat. And he was doing it, kind of mixing both. And the thing that didn't work for me is that he was using challah, which is a leavened raised bread that is woven. We eat it. My wife makes it, and it's just like that. It's a very large raised loaf. And on the right side of the screen, there's a place for comments, and there's people chit-chatting there the whole time. So I had a comment. Actually, there's 200 words, and I made 6 comments at least. And pretty soon everybody was jumping on me, and at the end of the show, Michael came on and basically said nothing I said was worthwhile, and that blah, blah, blah. And the next day I went on there, and all my comments were removed, so that's why I'm making this video. Michael basically feels that, well, let me say this. Yehoshua and the disciples had what Christians call the Last Supper at even on the 13th day of the first month. The rest of Israel would be eating Passover, Pesach, the next night. Yehoshua couldn't make it, so it was a day early. Now Michael says, which is a common position, that because it was the night before, it wasn't the Passover, and therefore the bread wasn't matzah. And actually, he called the bread arzo. Well, I don't really know any Greek, but I looked that one up. And he said because it's arzo, it was leavened bread. So that's 2 for Michael. Now, my position is that it was Passover, and it was matzah. I looked up arzo, and it says that it's wheat and water, and it's usually large and circular or little kind of oval loaves, and it's only as thick as your thumb. So that could very well be, that definitely is an unleavened bread. There's no yeast in it. Now, the interesting thing is that in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, over 10 times by them and by Yehoshua himself, calls what Christians call the Last Supper the Passover. 1. Matthew 26:17. Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Yehoshua, saying unto him, Where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover? 2. Matthew 26:18. And he said, Go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, The Master saith, My time is at hand, I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. 3. Matthew 26:19. And the disciples did as Yehoshua had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. 4. Mark 14:12. And the first day of unleavened bread, when they killed the Passover, his disciples said unto him, Where wilt thou that we go and prepare that thou may eat the Passover? 5. Mark 14:14. And wheresoever he shall go in, say ye to the good man of the house, The Master saith, Where is the guest chamber where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? 6. Mark 14:16. And his disciples went forth and came into the city and found as he had said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. 7. Luke 22:8. And he sent Peter and John, saying, Go and prepare us the Passover, that we may eat. 8. Luke 22:11. And you shall say unto the good man of the house, The master say unto thee, Where is the guest chamber, where I shall eat the Passover with my disciples? 9. Luke 22:13. And they went, and they found as he had said unto them, and they made ready the Passover. 10. Luke 22:15. And he said unto them, With desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. Okay, it's quite obvious that although the rest of Israel partook of the Passover 24 hours later, at even on the 14th day of the first month, Yehoshua and the 12 partook of the Passover. It says Passover 10 times in 3 different books. So here's where there's controversy with Rood. He says that because they ate artos, not matzah, it wasn't Passover, and he uses Challah for communion. And as they were eating, Yehoshua took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, Take, eat. This is my body. Rood is right. It is artos. Here's artos defined by Strong's. Outline of biblical usage. Food composed of flour, mixed with water and baked. The Israelites made it the form of an oblong or round cake as thick as one's thumb and as large as a plate or platter. Hence it was not to be cut but broken. Loaves were consecrated to Yehovah of bread used at the love feast and at the Lord's table. Flour mixed with water and baked. No leaven, about as thick as a thumb. This is exactly what my wife makes for Chag Matzot. So, with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and Yehoshua himself, over 10 times saying it's the Passover, I've got to think it's the Passover. And the arzo was matzah, it was unleavened bread. And here's the thing that American Christians just don't really understand. Everybody there at the Passover was a Hebrew. Now when you say to a Hebrew, as oft as you do this in remembrance of me, well, how oft is oft? Well, if you say it to a Hebrew, we hear immediately on Chag Matzot and Pesach, when you drink this cup and eat this bread, do this in remembrance of me. Well, we only eat that kind of bread for 7 days. Now there's just several other things. One thing is, the Word made flesh, his name while he was here was Yehoshua. When you say Yeshua, it's like calling him by a nickname. And although Yeshua is a Hebrew name, it only means salvation. When you say Yehoshua, you are proclaiming that he was, is, and always will be salvation. Another thing is, there's no such thing. Jews are only 1/12 of Israel, and they have their own religion. We have our own religion. You see, the rabbis have taken over and have run Judaism for 2,000 years. And in Deuteronomy 4:2 and 13:1, it says we're not supposed to add or subtract from the Torah. And in Deuteronomy 28, it says, do the Torah and you'll be blessed. Don't do it and you'll be cursed. Well, we've been under the tutelage of the rabbis for 2,000 years and we've been nothing but cursed. So there's no such thing as Judaism or Hebrew roots or Messianic Jews. If you look at Genesis 18:19, you will see that Yehovah was going to tell Abraham what was going to happen to see if he would teach his kids to walk in the way of the Lord. That's what it'll say, because they've replaced Yehovah with Adonai, which is translated Lord. Anyways, it'll say to see if they would walk in the way of Yehovah. And the way of Yehovah, I have a study, and I can send it to you if you email me, with over 40 times the way of Yehovah is mentioned. And it's even in Acts 18, like 22, they talk about Apollos, who was schooled in the way of Yehovah. It says the way of the Lord there. So the way of Yehovah goes all the way through. So people that have Torah in them, and Torah comes out of them, are called Derek Yehovah, the way of Yehovah. We are in the way of Yehovah. I have a tape on that you can watch. And the last and most serious thing is, I shouldn't be having to tell Michael Rood this. It's a clever imitation of Saturday Night Live, Shabbat Night Live, but he'd be way better off if it was Saturday Night Live, because it is just not Shabbat appropriate behavior. I know that people are working. We're supposed to be resting and not working. And it's like he's profaning Shabbat. They sell stuff on there, and people come and plug their songs and books. It is just not Shabbat appropriate behavior. And listen, for you, Michael Rood, if you ever get to see this, I just pray that Yehovah would bless you, give you eternal life and treasure in heaven.